in meditation, what's happening in the brain, because a lot of people think that meditation is about like checking out. And that to me couldn't be any further from the truth. Like, it's about totally checking in. And when we totally check in and we're really, really present, it's such a different state of awareness and consciousness than what we move through most of the day. So when we sit and we're just paying attention to the breath, as you were saying, like maybe with just fundamental, basic, not necessarily easy, but fundamental mindfulness of paying attention to the breath. And with each breath in and out, the attention is slowly kind of letting go of all of the trappings.
That was Darrell Jones. Hey everyone, welcome back to Seeker and Sage. My name is Danny Pomploon and I am your host. I'm coming at you with episode 138 today, and today I've got Darrell Jones on the show. Darrell Jones and I recently just met because I am in a teacher training right now, specifically for meditation. So I've been meditating, I don't know how long I've been meditating for, since forever. But specifically, I come from a yoga background, and this meditation training is not just a yoga background, but a more Buddhist principle background. And it's cool because I honestly thought going into this training that I was going to know most of these things. And the truth is I've learned so much in just 2 small, quick sessions. And it's been really good given the circumstances of the world, but being able to provide this knowledge to others, so, being able to get grounded, being able to observe yourself, and being able not to let your thoughts control you. It's been quite interesting. So Darrell's one of the facilitators on the staff, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. He's a super cool guy, super chill. Another friend of mine had told me about this training, and Darrell specifically, so I had to dig in and do a little research, and I'm so glad that I did. We get into a little bit about mindfulness, meditation practice, but Darrell really demystifies a lot of it and breaks it all down for y'all. So I found this conversation super, super, super chill. Super chill. And speaking of super chill, you should actually go check out the people over at Chill Anywhere. They've got a cool little app, and they also do a bunch of trainings and workshops online as well. I highly recommend them. I do love them a lot. It's been a great experience so far in the training. Just in case y'all have forgot, the Soul Reset Challenge is happening on October 12th. 20 days of meditation, pranayama, and restorative yoga. I just feel like we all need it. I know I personally need it, so that's why I'm offering it this time around. I don't get to do the retreat that I normally do this year for it, so it's 100% free. It's going to be on my app. You can go to the app now and sign up under the More tab. If you don't have the app, download it. The podcast is also now in the app. And if you love the podcast, head over to the iTunes store, leave us a review, give the love, because we love you. And let's get to it. Here goes episode 138 with Darrell Jones. Hope y'all enjoy this. Darrell Jones, what's going up, brother?
I'm so happy to be hanging out with you today.
I know. Normally I get to hang out with, so far I've got to hang out with you a couple of times because I am in teacher training you are facilitating the teacher training that I'm in.
Yes. This is an opportunity though for us to chit chat and not so much be in content download, a little bit more of a dialogue. I'm excited about that.
I have to tell you though, I've been meditating since forever. I'm sure I've been doing it for a long time without knowing how to do it, as you kindly explained to us this last session, how you kind of meditate almost all the time. But even in just these 2 sessions, and I'm totally going to tell myself here, I'm not a good student. we just agreed that we're having a casual conversation. But
wait, why do you say you're not a good student?
I don't do homework well. I don't do reading well. I have this whole made up dialogue in my head. I didn't go to school till I was in 3rd grade, and then I dropped out of high school. So the educational system just really didn't do anything. I wasn't in it long enough to I wasn't in it long enough.
Yeah.
And so even when I first did my first teacher training as a yoga teacher, I was the worst. half the time I would show up stoned. The other half of the time I wouldn't pay attention. I would fall asleep. Like I was that guy. Anyway, so I'm typically, I don't tend to be a very traditional learner.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, I do have, like I'm definitely street smart and all that fun stuff, but I was just telling, I was in San Diego this last weekend with a couple of friends, and we were out by a pool hanging out, and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Reading." And they're like, "That's a thick ass book," and it was Full Catastrophic Living.
Uh-huh.
And I have to say, man, like, I not only have done my homework, but I've annotated stuff, and I've never done that.
Wow.
It's I know, right? True confessions of Danny Pomploon. It's been cool because, here I am, I'm a yoga teacher for, 10 years or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I know what I'm doing, yada, yada, yada. And I'm coming into this, meditation teacher training and never coming in with the attitude of like, oh, well, I know this stuff. So I was actually just really, I always come in looking at facilitation as a facilitator. I'm always like, it's in real time. I'm literally dissecting what people are doing. But also, the conversation that we first had about having a beginner's mindset was so important. And I've learned so much in these 2 sessions in this teacher training that not that I was doing it wrong. I just have like a different level of awareness, not a different level of respect, but maybe a different level of respect for what I was doing and how I was doing it and how you personally, have facilitated it in such a meaningful way.
Well, thank you. I feel so. I have a long history of um, loving education. That doesn't necessarily mean, as you were saying, that I was necessarily the best student, but I have loved learning most of my life. Sometimes it's been about meditation and things along those lines, but oftentimes it's been other topics. And I I have some very strong opinions about learning, and in particular, our traditional education system that I feel sets a lot of people up for disappointment and failure. And not that they don't have the ability to learn, but there's this standard of, just like success for one person looks different than success for another person. In the style or the way that someone learns. I mean, if you've done any traditional educational, there's kinesthetic learners that need to move. There are auditory learners that need to hear. There's people that need to verbalize things. There's all these different ways of assimilating information. And, I too experienced the same thing. I always felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't read that. But I took really good notes. I would listen in class and I would assimilate a lot of the information that was needed to take a test or to have a dialogue or to write a paper or whatever it was. But the thing that's so awesome in terms of what you're sharing about reading and annotating is my experience has been that a lot of different traditions, you paraphrase this idea, but when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And so much of our education is not about if we're ready, it's this is the path that you should do. And so, especially in our adult years, but sometimes it happens when we're kids, but especially in our adult years, I have found when I step into an educational experience, regardless of the content, if it's something that I've chosen and I'm excited about, I show up in a way that is just brilliant. I mean, sometimes I still don't read, the cover to cover of a book for whatever the study may be, but the way that I engage with it is very different. And to me, that points a little bit to mindfulness. Paying attention to the present moment in a particular way. It's hard to do that unless you want to, or you make some sort of energized effort. Not that it needs to be a struggle, but so much of our learning is and being invited to pay attention, but we have no purpose for it, right? I'm just thinking of myself in 5th grade, the first time that my parents were called in because the teacher was like, your son is not, a bad student, but he's just kind of like silly and goofy and he's not paying attention and he's disrupting the class. And I wasn't trying to be a jerk about anything. I was just kind of bored. And so I was being quote unquote forced into this learning situation and there wasn't any purpose behind it for me. So it became very challenging for me to pay attention on purpose. Um, And so the conditions, although they don't have to be a certain way, because I come from a background that is more spiritually and philosophically based, which sometimes can be a little theoretical and removed from the physical world and what's happening in our life. But it's based in this principle that we don't need, like the universe, God, spirit, whatever language may work for you. We have everything that we need. There is a law that wants to create with us. If we partner with it, we can, co-create something amazing. Um, and a lot of times I think we are not in a co-creative mode. We are reacting to the world, and feeling that it's happening to us as opposed to us, living and working with it. And in the educational realm, so much of it is at us, right? And so I'm just, as a long-winded response to that, it makes me very happy to hear that this training has come into your life at a time when you're just kind of like in the flow with it, and it doesn't feel like this thing that's being placed upon you. I think that makes a
Yeah,
huge
and
difference
it's
to show up.
what's super interesting about it as well as, there's so many different aspects of, the mindfulness practice that I had no idea about. Here again, like I was saying, here I thought that I was, doing it, or not that I was doing it wrong, but I just didn't realize that there was much more substance to it outside of like, sitting down and quieting and, give your brain something to do and call it a day kind of situation, so that you have a pause. But
Right.
it's now even been, I mean, I'll go for it. I'm gonna sell it really hard here.
Okay. Yeah.
It's transformed me. Everyone go do this now. No, but really it's given me, like, in the two, in the two different, the two different, like the first two chapters that we read out of Buddha's Brain had like completely, I've read that book years ago for a training, and I reread it again. And like you said, when you're ready, you're ready. And this time, as I'm reading it again, I'm like, oh God, like I get it now. I think I maybe saw the words on the pages beforehand,
Yeah.
but now I actually understand what the words are doing.
Yeah.
Darrell, I'm going to just really quick, I'm going to throw us off track and remind me, what was your master's was in something so cool. I forgot what it was.
It's a master's in consciousness studies.
Oh my God. Can we have another podcast just on that?
Sure.
Okay. So how did you, Chill was a space that was based in Chicago. It was for a while before Corona, I started to notice that meditation spaces were, popping up as a thing. And then obviously Corona came around and, fucked a lot of things up for a lot of us, myself included.
Yeah.
And y'all decided to, move everything online, which I think is brilliant. And, I can't even recall how many times I've said this on this podcast, but so many people need this right now. And we don't have to make meditation sexy anymore. We don't have to make yoga sexy anymore. People are literally banging on the door being like, I need something, I need this help. When you, when you look at the generalization of mindfulness, how do you make it digestible to someone?
Well, it's one of my favorite questions. I mean, the whole reason that Chill came about and that I actually joined it was, the founder and owner. She was not and is not a meditation facilitator. Although I think after 3 years of working in the business, she could probably do an excellent job of facilitating a meditation if she wanted to. But she, was a self-proclaimed capitalist here in Chicago. Trading in the market is a huge industry, and she worked in trading. She worked as a hedge fund manager, and through her yoga practice, was getting introduced to yoga, and was like, man, here I am in my power suit. I mean, very traditional corporate gear, getting stressed out by the nature of my work. And I want to find a place that I can go and sit in the middle of the day and not have to, get out of my gear and put on yoga pants and, set a chime and burn some incense and pray to a deity or bow to the guru or whatever it may be. And not that those things are bad. Those are very specific ways of embracing the traditions that are connected to the practice of meditation. She was looking for something that was a little bit more secular. And me personally, coming from a background with a master's in consciousness studies, where it's looking at the world's religions, but also like psychology and sociology, even a little bit of like playing with quantum physics theory. Not that we were like splitting atoms, but looking at the theory behind it. All of these systems around the world that people have been trying to better understand what in the hell is happening as they spin around, the universe. They're all just systems, based upon culture, based upon history, based upon so many different things. But if you look at the way that all of these traditions work, not so much in what they believe, even in the scientific world, there's a moment of pause, right? You don't just go into a laboratory and start throwing a bunch of things into a beaker or you'll blow it up. You don't just,
Boring.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun to blow stuff up, but
Yeah, totally.
but in terms of like, furthering something, if you're really trying to study something, get results, and some information, you have to have some idea of what you're doing into it, right? You have to have purpose, you have to have intention. And to have a clear intention, to have a clear purpose, you have to pause for a moment and kind of contemplate. And to me, that's a form of meditation. I doubt most, laboratory scientists would call themselves mindful meditators, but they are in practice, doing the exact same thing that someone who is, a mystic Christian or a Sufi Muslim or a Kabbalist, a Jewish practitioner that are a little bit more mystical in this contemplative space of looking. And you know the the result of engaging in that practice, even if it's just stopping and pausing in the middle of your workday, which is what our owner Laura was looking for, does something to afford that nervous system shift where we go from that kind of fight, flight, fix work mode into a restore, a digest, a rest space. And I love that you say it doesn't need to be sexy, because I feel like on some level, up until Corona, that was one of the things that, um, it wasn't so much that chill was trying to like over the top make itself sexy, but our intention and mission was to really bring these sometimes a little lofty, heady ideas of mindfulness and just bring it into the mainstream world and make it practical, because it's something, as you said, everybody needs, whether Corona is in effect or it's just the regular, I'm using air quotes right now, the regular stresses of our lives. It's a practice that just allows your body and your innate intelligence of your health to function at its best. But there weren't a lot of places that were doing that, and so that's what brought chill forward. And I was looking for something. I was looking for a way of bringing it out of that kind of woo woo new age, yoga studio context, which I love and don't poo poo at all. But that's a very specific audience. And most of the people in that audience are looking for it. Whereas, the trader, the HR professional, the mom with or dad with 5 kids at home that doesn't have much bandwidth for anything other than, what am I going to be doing in the next 10 minutes with these kids? Um, those are the folks that really can benefit from this practice to bring about a greater sense of well-being and to lift it out of, you got to go on a retreat. You have to go in 10 days of silence. You've got to study with this specific guru and kind of almost get into this devotional space. To transition it out of that, I don't think it's appropriating in a negative way cultural, religious, spiritual, or philosophical traditions. It's lifting the best of these practices and applying it and presenting it in a way that makes it accessible, removing some of the barriers of unknowingness that a lot of people have. And that to me is the brilliance of what Chill offers. And it's really what I think Kimberly and I are attempting to do in the teacher training. is to empower people from a lot of different walks of life to have a great understanding. You're not going to know everything about meditation at the end of this, 12-week program, but you're going to know a lot, and you're going to have a great context so that no matter who walks into your meditation, whether it be online or in a physical room, if they be 85 or they be 8, you'll have some way of connecting with that practitioner and inviting practice so they stay fully engaged.
Yeah. I have to say, as a person who, my story is that of like, I came from the streets, and so yoga's dumb and all that mindfulness stuff is dumb, and then here I am 10 years later, and I'm like, this is the best thing in the whole wide world. It's better than drugs. you know uh, Even now, coming into it, seriously, man, sometimes when I go to places where I'm like, where was I for whatever many minutes I was gone, or however many years it felt like I was gone. Mindfulness for me has always been the easiest practice for me to do. It's always
Yeah.
been easy and really accessible for me to just sit there and be like, okay, I'm just going to watch my breath while everything else, passes by. And, maybe you can help me out with this because you've studied this. I have this moment a lot in meditation where I call it God state, basically, but it's kind of like where I'm half asleep and I'm half awake, and I could care less about anything else going on.
Yeah.
It's like this, like I don't know. What is that?
So I mean, you've already described it a little bit, that, it's this different state of awareness or consciousness, right? Where most of us, our brain is vibrating or operating. I mean, they have different alpha, gamma, beta, delta waves that get studied, and each one of those different waves have a different level of consciousness or awareness. And in meditation, what's happening in the brain, because a lot of people think that meditation is about like checking out, and that to me couldn't be any further from the truth. Like, it's about totally checking in. And when we totally check in and we're really, really present, it's such a different state of awareness and consciousness than what we move through most of the day. So when we sit and we're just paying attention to the breath, as you were saying, like maybe with just fundamental, basic, not necessarily easy, but fundamental mindfulness of paying attention to the breath. And with each breath in and out, the attention is slowly kind of letting go of all of the trappings. Visually in my mind, I'm a kid of the 70s and 80s. I grew up, watching lots and lots of cartoons and animation, like becoming more and more real. And I love anime. And so some of it is most of it's very apocalyptic, but just these images of like the human consciousness. We think of ourselves being so isolated and detached from the world, but it's almost like every single person, every single interaction that we have, we kind of like connect to that, right? And there's this little cord or hose or whatever you want to call it that moves outside of us and connects to that person or to that organization or to that situation. And that's neither good nor bad. The challenge is that a lot of times throughout the day, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of these little cords out into the world. And that's when people feel kind of scattered. That's when people feel overwhelmed because they're in some level entertaining all of those connections. And when we go into a space of mindfulness, when we go into a space of practicing mindful meditation, with each breath in and out, as we focus more and more on the present moment, we start to like cut those cords or unplug, and all of those distractions fall away. And when things get really simplified to the present moment, then the brain moves into this other pattern of awareness. And I remember when I first started meditating, I used to sit on the couch with my legs crossed. And I would, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes in, I would all of a sudden feel like I was floating. Like I was no longer horizontal on the couch, I was like tilting vertical, where my bottom was like turned towards the wall. And I really was like, oh my God, dude, am I floating? And I would open up an eye. It's just a weird like a viewpoint. But I realized the more and more I did that was one of the ways in which we base so much of our reality on what we see with our eyes. So you don't have to close your eyes when you meditate, but when you do it's one of the really like direct ways that we cut some of those cords, that we let go of some of the trappings of our external condition. And when we have this internal awareness, it becomes more than a two-dimensional experience. It becomes multidimensional. And that to me is what, you would call like the Zen time, the God moment, the floating. And most of us experience that, I think, right before we fall asleep. It's very similar in terms of the activation of the brain waves and what's going on there. But in meditation, the goal is to not go into that uh, pattern of sleep. In our neurology, we stay just above it and alert and awake, and it's kind of fun to play there, right? A lot of us experience that, I think, right before we wake up, and our dreams are really vivid. We almost feel like we can control them, and that's that sweet spot that a lot of people try to land and play in meditation, where the reality is not just based upon the time of day, the day of the week, the month of the year, the weather pattern that may be moving through. There's also this internal world that's really quite vast, and to play around there is cool, and it feels otherworldly, it feels godly, it feels transcendent, which is a word that gets used a lot in meditation, because we do lift above kind of the regular mundane conditions that we're always operating in. And to me, that's one of the gifts of regular practice, regardless of what style it may be, is to unplug from the regular habitual movements of thought, action, and behavior. It does something to shift our neurology in terms of the actual brain science behind this. But when we shift that awareness, as we just talked about this past week in teacher training, is that where our attention is placed, and how we place our attention upon uh, the conditions of our world, is really what determines our experience. We think it's based upon what we're looking at, but it's the fact that we've turned our attention to, CNN. It's not the fact of what CNN has to say. CNN is always going to be giving some sort of story of sensationalism. The fact that we've turned our attention to it is, partly dictating the experience. And then how we bring our attention to it. Are we bringing our attention to it in a space of fear? Are we bringing it into a space of just awareness and wanting to see what the world is doing and thinking? That is where most of us are kind of locked. And for those of us who practice meditation regularly, not only in the experience of meditating, but the more and more we practice it, we start to carry this heightened sense of awareness, or deepened sense of awareness, off of the meditation cushion, so to speak, into the regular activities of our lives. And the activities don't change, but our relationship to it does. And that's why I think it's such a great wellness practice. It's such a great exercise to engage in every single day, whether we're in Corona or not, to help manage the mind's ability to cope and be with the highs and lows of our life. And most of the world is trained to numb, um, dealing with things, as opposed to powerfully standing with it, and having some sort of choice, as opposed to a reaction that can just perpetually put us into this cycle and spin, where it's almost like it gets overused as an image, but that hamster wheel, where we're just running and running and running and running, and we're not going anywhere. We're not really doing anything.
One of the things that I picked up, I mean, first off, so many things that you just said there are like golden nuggets. Like, your relationship with things is really important. I remember last week, or maybe it was the week before, we were talking about sleep specifically, and like how, before you go to bed and you have all the thoughts. And I actually, believe it or not, like I didn't share this with the group. First, this thought, I don't know if you remember or saw me on Tuesday, but I literally could not type fast enough. I was like, everyone slow down, slow down. I was taking so many notes. And then I ended up doing like this, this meditation, earlier on in the day, and I did it on Instagram based on what I had learned. And it was the whole different experience in itself. We can get into that, but I have been, my stress level has been a lot higher. We're all stressed out right now. You know what I mean? But specifically, I've had a couple of things going on. There's some shifts. I might be moving and things like that. And so keeping up at night has been, I'm like winning at that. I'm doing a really great job at not sleeping right now.
Okay.
And what I've actually been doing is, while I'm sitting there, laying there, I should say, and I have this whole, story, the real, it's like the movie is just playing at like double time. But I started to do the thing that we talked about in class, where I was like, hold on, wait, let me stop paying attention to that. Let me just pay attention to my breath. And I kid you not, Darrell, it's like instant sleep. It's like when I stop thinking about like, oh, I got to do this, and maybe I got to move, and maybe I need a bigger space, and maybe blah, 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 and I have homework to do, well, whatever it is. I've laid there and just been like, let me just pay attention to my breath really quick, because that's right here, that's right now, and that's pretty slow. It's not as fast as everything else going on. And sleep has been a way more attainable goal than not.
Nice.
The stuff works.
Yeah. Well, it's so that story is such a great example, testimony, however you want to phrase it, to why this works and how it works, right? There's this idea and belief that all of us hold, and I include myself in this. I'm in no way above any of this human behavior, because I am a part of this thing we call the human race, where we think that in order for us to live a better life, solve the world's problems, we have to constantly think about stuff, right? And how many times do you hear people say, it could be as simple as, do you want to go out to dinner next week or not? I don't know. I got to think about it. It's like, what is there to think about? Do you want to do it or not? I mean, sure, there's always things to, weigh in on, and there's schedules and all of those things. But we do that with so much in our world. And I think that right before sleep or in sleep is where a lot of people find themselves in that space of, oh my gosh, I got to think about this stuff. But a lot of times we don't have all the information we need. And what are you going to do in bed to actually, do something, unless you get up and leave sleep and go out and start, knocking on doors and like, where, are you guys renting your space and it's 2 a.m? Like, that's not an appropriate time to go look for an apartment or workspace, whatever it may be. And the simplicity of like focusing on something in the present moment. I mean, that was the thing that John Kabat-Zinn really, I feel, just so brilliantly, it brought forward, as a psychologist, into the clinical world of, wow, the brain is constantly firing and activating all of these ideas, trying to make sense of the world. And, from the Buddhist standpoint, that's the suffering, right? When we try to assign meaning to everything, that's when we suffer. Well, why did they say that to me? And, that's not a bad question to ask, but if you're kind of like spinning in that question for a week, that can be, kind of shitty. Maybe there isn't that much to think about, but we make it into something. And I know for myself, I have an easy time falling asleep, but sometimes I'll get up at like 3 or 4 a.m, and it's like, holy crap, the horses are out of the gate, and I still have 2 or 3 hours left to sleep. And I may have like a really full day in front of me. And it's like, so then I can get into this weird rut of like, you need to fall back asleep. You've got to fall back asleep. You don't fall asleep, you're gonna have enough energy. You're supposed to be this mindful guy that's always super chill and rested. And oh my God, why are you thinking about this right now? It's 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'll just get onto that. I'm just running. It's like I've had 9 cups of coffee, but I didn't. And that turning attention to the present moment, that John Kabat-Zinn, paying attention to the present moment on purpose. Like when our mind is wandering, there isn't much purpose to it. It's just wandering. But when we focus on something as simple as the breath, we are really in purpose. We are intentionally doing something. And all of a sudden, the other stuff that's so sexy and so alluring to us, it doesn't go away. It doesn't necessarily get solved. But in that moment, there's that anti-inflammatory response of the hyperactive mind that is just what we need, whether it's to fall back asleep, whether it's to just step away from the edge of freak out, to stop, making a phone call to someone that's going to be completely nasty and inappropriate, whatever we may be facing. But yeah, in terms of sleep, it's huge. One of the questions that a lot of people ask when I do any sort of teaching, but especially in the more corporate setting, everyone wants to perform right. Type A is very, very big in the corporate world. They're like, well, what's the best time of when can I optimize this practice? And it's like,
How do I win? How do I win at meditation?
Right, exactly. Right. I want the gold star in meditating. And I would say, like, if you think about meditating and all of it, you feel compelled to do it, then that's the right time.
Darrell, I got to tell you, I feel personally attacked right now with that statement. I feel seen and attacked all at the same time. I'm confused.
Dude, I can only say it because I know it so well,
Yeah.
But there's something to be said for meditating in the morning and in the evening. To think about it as, and this to me is where it doesn't have to be spiritual, but the idea of ritual is such an important thing in our life. And most of us in the modern world don't have a whole lot of regular ritual. And when I mean ritual, it doesn't mean that you have to have a copper goblet, with some special thing in it. It's just, one of the rituals that most of us engage in every single day is brushing our teeth, right? It's this ritual of opening the day and a ritual of closing the day. And that is a very physical, tactile, biological thing that we do. And there's reason behind it. And we don't question it much. But when it comes to our mind, our attention, our neurology, I think the world needs a little bit more ritual around the activity of the mind and how we allow it to be. And meditation at the beginning of the day, it allows us to open up with a little bit of intention as opposed to just rushing into our day and starting to go down the laundry list of schedules. It gives us that pause just before, like a scientist, before going into the laboratory to experiment. Before we go into the laboratory of our life of that day, what if we pause for a moment and really let the Venn diagram of our attention go, oh, I'm not only a husband, I'm a teacher, I'm a son, I'm an American, I'm whatever the things may be, and I allow all of those to kind of fuse together. And from that, welcome some unique intention or purpose for your day to go with you. And then at the end of the day, back to that idea of sleep, back to that idea of getting into that Zen God floaty space of allowing the practice to help you unplug from all of the things that have been stimulating you through the day. Because if we don't, which happens to most of us, our mind stays in that racing space, and either it doesn't allow us to go to sleep, or as we fall asleep, the mind's still trying to figure out and solve the world's problems, and we wake up at 3 a.m. and we're like, what the hell?
Yeah. I think another thing that people forget too is, sleep is for a couple things. It's for the body to rest, but it's also where memory is created, right? It's where things are stored from the day. So to be able to, I learned this from a teacher actually in India, but to be able to meditate before bed is a way of dumping all the excess crap out of your head that you don't need to store. Yeah. It's literally getting it out so that you're not only resting your body at the end of the night, but resting your mind at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm. What's good to do in terms of it being really practical, because sometimes people, I think especially when they first start meditating, the hardest thing is the fact that there's so many thoughts that we're not aware of because we are, kind of the mind naturally excludes so that it can, focus to the best of its ability or more importantly, to avoid pain. So at the end of the day to meditate, sometimes people are like, are you kidding me? I'll never go to sleep. Like, I don't want to think about all those thoughts. So sometimes what I will do when I can't handle it, I will literally do a brain dump where I'll sit in meditation and I'll have a piece of paper and pen or pencil with me. And just as stuff comes in, I just write it down. And it's a visceral dumping, releasing, letting go, cutting the cord, uh, unplugging. It's like, oh, I can pick up all this stuff tomorrow morning. It will literally be on a page where I won't have to forget or think that I might forget something. And my mind will, oh, now you can let go. Now you can actually, relax. Now you can actually be present with, your family, friends, or whomever, and have an evening. But
And
yeah, that
yourself.
brain dump is huge. Whether it's physical writing or just giving the mind an opportunity to kind of let go of that stuff.
Yeah. All right, Darrell. Well, it wouldn't be an
I have a
episode of
question for you.
mindfulness meditate. Oh, go.
Just really quick. What do whether it's associated to the Chill Teacher Training Program or just in your personal experience, what do you feel like is like the crux? What is the thing that if you had, 2 seconds, which you do right now, and you're like, this is what you have to know. I want the world to know about meditation and how it can support them. What is it?
I keep coming back to this answer with almost everything that I teach these days, and it's the agency of choice.
Yeah.
Every single, yoga, it's taken me a really long time. I started off I called myself a yoga bro for a really long time, but as I never thought I would be doing any of this crap. Are you kidding? Like, I never thought I was going to go I want to go study in India and go straight to the well. And I really want to understand what the spirituality stuff is about. No, I wanted to move my body and do cool party tricks. That's what I was about. Totally. Low key, not so low key. It's all I wanted to do. And now, as I see myself moving into the seat of a teacher in the sense that my studentship right now is the most important thing to me. And I want to go deep. I mean, I want to go to the Vedas. I want to go into I want to go there. I changed the podcast name to Seeker and Sage. That says it all.
Yeah.
And what I'm starting to realize is I never thought that I was teaching philosophy in yoga. I never thought that I was teaching any of the things in yoga. I thought I was just teaching party tricks and fun stuff. And what I realized is actually, no, I've been doing that the entire time. To teach someone the articulation of a joint, to teach someone to stop, shut up, and pay attention to the smallest nuance of your hand turning outwards, that's mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you the agency of shutting everything off, tuning in, and having that freedom. And that choice is yours. And we forget that we have that choice because specifically now we have everything in life going on compounded with Corona, compounded with wildfires and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So what I think, for me, the biggest takeaway is that, we have this innate wisdom that lives within every single one of us. We go out to ask for advice and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, it's inside. We have an opportunity to get quiet enough to trust because it's in there. And that's what, I don't know. That's for me, what the most important part is, I don't have to second guess as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I don't have to go and ask 50 million people, what I think I should do based on their, decisions or their experiences in life. I can really just tune in and figure out where I'm at,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right, man. It wouldn't be, like I was saying, a meditation episode without you guiding us through a little mini meditation. So let's close with a 2 minutes Darrell Jones greatest hits.
All right, here we go. So wherever you may be listening to this podcast, invite yourself to pause, even if you're walking down the street listening to it and headphones. Just stop where you are. Let your eyes be opened or closed. The choice is yours. take the slowest, most exaggerated breath in through your nose. And as you exhale, whether you're seated or standing, feel your feet on the floor, pressed inside your shoes, whatever the skin of your feet may be touching, and imagine your attention being anchored there. Not your thinking, your attention. And then slowly from the feet, float your attention up through the legs, past the hips, the abdominal wall, the pelvis, the lower back, through the chest, and pause at the heart. Most of us spend the day above the neckline. That is where we experience life. For the next few breaths, what would it be like to experience your being right now through your heart? A heart of kindness, compassion, understanding, gentleness. Welcome a slow breath. Imagine you're breathing in at the heart space. Exhaling through the heart. Feeling the heart as you inhale. Feeling the heart as you exhale. And with this next breath in and out, imagine that the heart can smile, and allow a soft smile to grace your heart as you breathe in. And as you exhale, welcoming stillness with the eyes opened or closed, notice how you feel in body, in mind, in emotion. Not that there should be anything that you ought to feel, just acknowledging what is here. One final breath in. And as you exhale, opening your eyes, lifting your attention up back out into your day. And before you move too much, is there an intention, a purpose that you can carry forward from this practice? Maybe it's calm, hope, understanding, peace, love. Whatever answer immediately comes to you, let it be enough. And now the practice is to carry that into the rest of your day. Thank you so much, Danny, for this time and for this practice and this opportunity to be together.
Thanks, Darrell, man. I can't wait for our next session to see what else I'm going to learn. I'm sure I'm probably going to have what I call them bursts of illumination. I'm sure it's going to happen for sure. Well, until the next Seeker and Sage, this is Darrell and Danny saying peace out.
Peace out.